The child on my operating table was 7 years old. Her name was Emma. She had blonde pigtails and a gap-toothed smile. And 3 hours ago, she'd been riding her bike in front of her house when a delivery truck ran a red light. Now her spleen was ruptured, her left lung was collapsing, and I was the only surgeon available to save her life. My hands didn't shake. They never do. I made the first incision with the precision I taught myself from YouTube videos, medical textbooks, and 6 years of pretending to be someone I'm not. The scrub nurse handed me instruments without hesitation. The anesthesiologist monitored Emma's vitals with complete trust in my abilities. No one in that room knew that the man holding the scalpel had never set foot in a medical school. No one knew that Dr. Michael Chen, board-certified trauma surgeon, employee of the month 3 times running, the doctor other doctors requested for their own families, was a fraud. Have you ever pretended to be someone you're not? Not a small lie, something big, something that could destroy your entire life if anyone found out. Before I tell you my story, I want you to think about that feeling, that constant fear of discovery, that exhaustion of maintaining a mask every single day. If you know what I'm talking about, drop a comment below. Because I've lived with that fear for 6 years, and I need to know I'm not the only one who understands. Emma survived. I walked out of that operating room at 3:47 a.m., stripped off my bloody gloves, and told her parents that their daughter would make a full recovery. Her mother collapsed against me, sobbing, calling me a hero. Her father shook my hand so hard I thought he'd break my fingers. "Thank you," he kept saying. "Thank you, thank you." I smiled. I said all the right things. And then I went to the staff bathroom, locked the door, and stared at myself in the mirror for 20 minutes. The face looking back at me was tired, older than 34. There were lines around my eyes that hadn't been there 6 years ago, and gray streaks in my hair that I'd stopped bothering to hide. But my hands were steady, my mind was clear, and the child I'd just saved would grow up to ride bikes and go to school and fall in love and have children of her own. Because of me. Because of a lie. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Unknown. Asterisk. I know what you are. My blood turned to ice. Unknown. Asterisk. Meet me tomorrow, 8 p.m. The coffee shop on 5th and Main. Come alone, or I send everything to the medical board. I read the message 7 times. Then I deleted it, smashed my phone against the sink until the screen shattered, and drove home in a daze. 6 years. 6 years of holding my breath, waiting for this moment. 6 years of saving lives and delivering babies and telling families their loved ones would be okay. 6 years of being better at this job than half the real doctors I worked with. And now someone knew. I should have run. I should have packed a bag, emptied my accounts, and disappeared before sunrise. That's what a smart person would have done. But I wasn't smart. I was tired. And some part of me, some broken, exhausted part, was almost relieved. The lie was finally catching up to me. And maybe, after 6 years, I was ready to stop running. 8 years earlier. I was 26 years old, drowning in debt and watching my mother die. That's not an exaggeration or a metaphor. I was literally sitting in a hospital room, holding her hand, watching cancer eat her alive, while doctors told me there was nothing they could do. "The tumor is inoperable," Dr. Morrison said, not even looking up from his clipboard. "We can try chemotherapy, but at this stage the success rate is less than 5%. I'd recommend palliative care. Make her comfortable." Make her comfortable? Like she was a dog being put down. "There has to be something else," I said. "Other treatments, clinical trials, anything." "Mr. Chen," Dr. Morrison finally met my eyes, and what I saw there wasn't compassion. It was impatience. "Your mother has stage 4 pancreatic cancer. She has maybe 3 months. I suggest you use that time wisely." He left before I could respond. My mother squeezed my hand. She was so thin by then, so fragile. The woman who'd worked 3 jobs to raise me alone, who'd gone without food so I could eat, who'd sacrificed everything so I could go to college. She was disappearing in front of me. "It's okay, Michael," she whispered. "I've made my peace." "I haven't." She smiled. That same smile she'd given me my whole life, the one that said everything would be all right, even when it wouldn't. "You were always stubborn, like your father." I didn't know my father. He'd left before I was born. Just another man who made promises he couldn't keep. But my mother never spoke badly about him. She never spoke badly about anyone. "I'm not giving up," I told her. "I'm going to find someone who can help. A specialist, a researcher, someone who actually gives a damn." "Michael," her voice was firmer now, "I need you to listen to me. When I'm gone, I want you to do something with your life, something that matters. You're so smart, smarter than anyone I've ever known. Don't waste that. Mom, promise me." I promised. 3 weeks later, she was dead. The funeral was small. A handful of neighbors, some coworkers from the restaurant where she'd waited tables for 15 years. I stood at her grave in a borrowed suit, wondering how I was supposed to keep a promise I didn't understand. Do something that matters. What did that even mean? I was a nobody, a college dropout with $80,000 in student loans and no marketable skills. I'd spent 3 years pursuing a pre-med degree before the money ran out, before I had to choose between textbooks and rent, before the dream of becoming a doctor died the same slow death as everything else in my life. I had nothing. I was nothing. But standing at my mother's grave, watching them lower her into the ground, something shifted inside me. Dr. Morrison's face kept flashing through my mind, his indifference, his dismissal, the way he'd written off my mother's life like it was an inconvenience. I thought about all the doctors I'd met during her illness, the ones who'd barely looked at her chart, the ones who talked over her like she wasn't in the room, the ones who treated her like a number, a statistic, a problem to be managed rather than a person to be saved. And I thought about the doctors I'd wanted to be, the ones I'd read about in textbooks, the ones who actually cared, who fought for their patients, who saw medicine as a calling rather than a career. The system had failed my mother. It had failed me. And suddenly, standing in that cemetery, I realized I had 2 choices. I could accept it, move on, get a job at a grocery store and spend the rest of my life wondering what might have been. Or I could become the doctor my mother deserved, even if I had to lie to do it. It started with research. I spent 6 months studying everything I could find about medical credentials, how degrees were verified, how licenses were issued, where the gaps in the system were. And there were gaps, enormous ones. The American medical system is built on trust. Trust that medical schools report accurately. Trust that state boards verify properly. Trust that hospitals check thoroughly. But trust, I learned, is just another word for assumption, and assumptions can be exploited. I found a man named Victor through the dark web. I don't know his real name. I never asked, and he never offered. But for $15,000, every cent I had, plus money borrowed from loan sharks I'm still paying back, he provided me with everything I needed. A medical degree from a Caribbean school that had closed 3 years earlier. Transcripts showing I'd graduated top of my class. Letters of recommendation from professors who'd conveniently passed away. A residency completion certificate from a hospital in Florida that had been destroyed by a hurricane. All fake, all perfect, all completely untraceable. The key, Victor told me during our one phone call, is choosing institutions that can't be verified. Dead professors, closed schools, destroyed records. The system doesn't check what it can't find. I spent another year teaching myself. Not at a medical school. I couldn't afford that, even if I'd had the credentials to apply. I learned from textbooks I stole from university libraries, from online lectures I accessed through hacked student accounts, from cadaver videos that made me vomit the first dozen times I watched them. I practiced sutures on pig skin from the butcher, learned anatomy by studying bodies at the medical examiner's office, where I'd gotten a job as a night janitor, memorized drug interactions, surgical procedures, diagnostic protocols. Everything a real medical student would learn in 8 years, I crammed into 18 months of obsessive, desperate study. I wasn't learning to pass a test. I was learning to save lives. There's a difference. When I finally applied for my medical license, I was terrified. I was certain someone would look at my credentials, see through the forgeries, and I'd end up in prison. But no one looked. Not really. The state board verified my degree with a phone call to an automated system Victor had set up. The hospital that hired me was so desperate for doctors, they barely glanced at my file. The attending physicians who supervised my first surgeries were too overworked to notice that the new guy asked more questions than he should. I made mistakes those first few months, small ones, hesitations, uncertainties, moments where I had to excuse myself to check a reference I should have known by heart. But I learned fast, faster than anyone expected. And here's the thing no one wants to admit. Medicine is a skill, like carpentry or cooking or playing piano. Yes, it requires knowledge. Yes, it requires training. But at its core, it's about pattern recognition, manual dexterity, and the ability to stay calm under pressure. Those things can't be taught in a classroom. They can only be learned through practice. And I practiced. Every single day. Every single patient. I studied cases other doctors ignored. I stayed late reviewing surgeries. I asked questions that residents half my age were too proud to ask. Within 2 years, I was good. Within 4 years, I was exceptional. By year 6, I was the doctor other doctors called when they didn't know what to do. I'm not telling you this to justify what I did. There is no justification. I broke the law. I violated trust. I put every patient who walked into my operating room at risk. But I also saved 847 lives. I counted. Every single one. Does that matter? Does the outcome justify the deception? I used to think so. I used to tell myself that the lives I saved outweighed the lie I was living. But then I got that text message, and everything I believed started to crumble. The coffee shop was nearly empty at 8 p.m. I sat in a corner booth, facing the door, watching everyone who entered. My hands were wrapped around a cup of coffee I hadn't touched. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. She walked in at 8:07. I knew immediately that she was the one. Not because she looked threatening. She didn't. She was maybe 50, with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a neat bun, and reading glasses perched on her nose. She looked like a librarian, or a grandmother, or anyone's favorite aunt. But her eyes were sharp, calculating, the eyes of someone who had spent a lifetime looking beneath surfaces. She slid into the booth across from me without asking permission. Dr. Chen. She didn't offer her hand. Or should I call you Michael, since we're being honest with each other? Who are you? My name is Dr. Patricia Holloway. I'm a medical fraud investigator for the State Licensing Board. I've been watching you for 18 months. My stomach dropped. 18 months? You're good. She pulled a folder from her bag and set it on the table between us. Very good. In fact, you're one of the best trauma surgeons in this city. Your patient outcomes are exceptional. Your complication rates are among the lowest in the state. You've saved lives that other doctors would have given up on. She opened the folder. Inside were photographs, surveillance photos of me entering the hospital, leaving the hospital, shopping for groceries, jogging in the park. I've been building a case against you for 1.5 years. I have your forged credentials, your fraudulent transcripts, your connection to Victor Mendez. Yes, we know about him too. I have enough evidence to put you in prison for 20 years. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. This was it. Everything I'd built, everything I'd worked for, crashing down around me. But here's the thing. She closed the folder. I haven't filed my report yet. I looked up, met her eyes. Why not? Because 3 months ago, you operated on my grandson. The world tilted. Emma? I whispered. The little girl from the bike accident? She's my daughter's child, 7 years old. She was supposed to die that night. The other surgeons had already written her off, but you saved her. You performed a surgery that most board-certified surgeons couldn't have pulled off, and you did it with nothing but raw skill and a piece of paper that says you graduated from a school that doesn't exist. She leaned forward. I've spent my entire career catching people like you, frauds, imposters, people who endanger patients by pretending to be something they're not. And in 23 years, I have never, not once, encountered someone like you. What do you want? Her voice softened. I want to know how a man with no medical training became one of the best surgeons in the state. I want to know why you did this. And then I want to decide whether justice is better served by putting you in prison or by letting you continue to save lives. I sat there for a long moment, processing what she was telling me. She wasn't turning me in. Not yet. She was giving me a chance to explain. It's a long story, I finally said. I have time. So I told her everything. My mother's death, the forged credentials, the years of self-teaching, the patients I'd saved, the guilt that kept me awake at night. She listened without interrupting, without judging, just listened. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. My husband was a doctor, she finally said. 40 years. He used to say that medicine wasn't about degrees or credentials. It was about dedication, about caring enough to do whatever it takes to save a life. She stood up. I'm not going to file my report. Not today, not ever, probably. But I need you to understand something, Michael. What you've done is still wrong. You've broken laws. You violated trust. And if you ever make a mistake that costs someone their life, I will personally make sure you never see the outside of a prison cell again. I understand. I hope you do. She paused at the door. My grandson is alive because of you. I'll never forget that. But I'll never stop watching either. She left, and I sat there, alone, wondering if I'd just been saved or condemned. 3 months after my meeting with Dr. Holloway, I met Sarah. She was a nurse in the ER, smart, sharp, with a wit that could cut through tension like a scalpel. She'd been working at the hospital for 2 years, and in all that time, I'd barely noticed her. I was too busy, too focused, too afraid of letting anyone get close enough to see through the mask. But then came the night of the bus crash. A charter bus carrying a high school basketball team had collided with a semi-truck on the highway. We received 47 patients in 2 hours. It was chaos, organized chaos, but chaos nonetheless. Every doctor, every nurse, every available hand was working at full capacity. Sarah and I were assigned to Trauma Bay 3 together. The patient was a 16-year-old named Marcus. He had multiple fractures, internal bleeding, and a traumatic brain injury. He was coding when they wheeled him in, and his chances of survival were less than 10%. But Sarah didn't accept that. She anticipated my every move before I made it, handed me instruments before I asked for them, caught mistakes I was too exhausted to notice. When Marcus's heart stopped for the second time, she performed chest compressions with a ferocity that seemed almost personal. "Come on," she muttered through gritted teeth. "Come on." We brought him back, stabilized him, got him to the ICU. And when it was over, when we were both standing in the hallway covered in blood and sweat, she turned to me and said, "You're different from the other doctors." I froze. "What do you mean?" "I've worked with a lot of surgeons. Most of them operate like it's a performance, like they're trying to impress someone. But you," she studied my face, "you operate like every patient is the only patient, like their life is the only thing that matters." I didn't know what to say. "I don't know your story," she continued, "and I'm not asking. But whatever made you become a doctor, whatever drives you,
It's real. I can see it." She walked away before I could respond. But something changed that night. A door opened, and over the following weeks, I found myself seeking out Sarah's company. Coffee in the break room, conversations between shifts. Slowly, carefully, I let her in. Here's where I need to pause and ask you something. I knew getting close to Sarah was dangerous. I knew that the more she learned about me, the more likely she was to discover my secret. But I was lonely. After 6 years of lying to everyone around me, of wearing a mask that never came off, I was desperate for connection, for someone who saw me, really saw me, and didn't turn away. Have you ever risked everything for that feeling? Let me know in the comments, because I'm still not sure if what I did next was brave or stupid. 6 months later, we were in love. A year after that, I asked her to marry me. She said yes. And I never told her the truth. 2 years into our marriage, Sarah was pregnant. We'd been trying for 8 months, and when the test finally came back positive, we held each other and cried. Happy tears, the kind of tears you cry when everything you've ever wanted is suddenly within reach. But as her belly grew, so did my fear. I was going to be a father. I was going to raise a child who would look up to me, who would believe I was exactly who I said I was. A doctor, a hero, a good man, and I was none of those things. The guilt started keeping me awake at night. I'd lie beside Sarah, listening to her breathe, feeling our baby kick against my palm, and I'd think about all the ways this could fall apart. What would happen if someone discovered my secret? What would happen to Sarah, to our child? I started making mistakes, small ones at first, a momentary hesitation during surgery, a prescription written at the wrong dosage, caught and corrected before any harm was done, a patient's name forgotten in the middle of rounds. Dr. Holloway noticed. She called me 3 weeks before Sarah's due date. "You're slipping." I was in my office, door closed, trying to calm my racing heart. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I've been watching you for 5 years, Michael. I know your patterns. I know when you're focused and when you're distracted. And for the past 2 months, you've been somewhere else. My wife is about to have a baby. I'm allowed to be distracted. Not in an operating room, you're not." Her voice was sharp. "Whatever is going on with you, fix it. Because if you make a mistake, a real mistake, I won't be able to protect you, and I won't try." She hung up. I sat there for a long time, staring at nothing. She was right. I was falling apart. The weight of the lie, the pressure of the pregnancy, the constant fear of discovery, it was all becoming too much. I needed to tell Sarah the truth. I'd thought about it 1,000 times, rehearsed the conversation in my head, but every time I imagined her face, the confusion, the betrayal, the horror, I couldn't go through with it. She loved Dr. Michael Chen. She'd married Dr. Michael Chen. She was having Dr. Michael Chen's baby. What would happen when she discovered that man didn't exist? 2 weeks later, our daughter was born. We named her Grace. She had Sarah's eyes and my mother's smile. And the moment I held her, I knew I would do anything to protect her.
Anything to give her the life she deserved, even if it meant living the lie forever. Grace was 3 years old when the past caught up with me. His name was Daniel Whitmore, 57 years old, successful attorney. He came into the ER with chest pains that turned out to be a massive heart attack. I performed emergency bypass surgery and saved his life. Standard procedure. Another name on my list of 847. But Daniel Whitmore wasn't standard. 2 weeks after his surgery, he walked into my office unannounced. My secretary tried to stop him, but he pushed past her with the confidence of a man who'd spent his life pushing past obstacles. "Dr. Chen." He sat down across from my desk without being invited. "We need to talk." "Mr. Whitmore, you should be at home resting." "I know who you are." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Excuse me?" He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a folder, opened it on my desk. Inside were documents I hadn't seen in almost a decade. My forged medical degree, my falsified transcripts, photographs of me meeting with Victor Mendez. I'm an attorney, Daniel said calmly, a very good one. And when someone saves my life, I like to know who they are. So I did some digging. I couldn't breathe. Your credentials are impressive. Top of your class at Ross University School of Medicine. Completed residency at Jackson Memorial Hospital in Miami. Excellent record, glowing recommendations. He smiled. All of it fake. What do you want? That's the question, isn't it? He leaned back in his chair. I could turn you in, have your license revoked, your career destroyed, your freedom taken away. You'd never see your daughter grow up. The mention of Grace made my blood run cold. Or, he continued, we could come to an arrangement. What kind of arrangement? I have a son, 24 years old. He's troubled. Multiple arrests, substance abuse issues, general disappointment. Last month, he got into an accident while driving under the influence, hit a pedestrian. The victim survived, but barely. I saw where this was going. You want me to change the medical records. I want you to testify that the victim's injuries were less severe than reported, that my son's actions weren't directly responsible for her condition, that perhaps her pre-existing health issues contributed to the outcome. That's perjury. That's obstruction of justice. That's survival. Daniel's eyes were hard. You've built a life on lies, Dr. Chen. You're not in a position to lecture me about ethics. He stood up. I'll give you a week to decide. Say yes, and your secret stays safe. Say no, and I'll destroy everything you've built. He left the folder on my desk. Keep that as a reminder of what's at stake. I sat there for hours after he left, staring at the evidence of my own deception, thinking about Sarah, about Grace, about everything I had to lose. And I realized with terrible clarity that the lie I'd been living had finally trapped me. I couldn't say yes, couldn't corrupt the one thing I'd tried to do right, couldn't pervert the medicine I'd dedicated my life to, even if that life was built on fraud. But I couldn't say no either, couldn't watch everything fall apart, couldn't let Grace grow up with a father in prison. I was caught between two impossible choices, and I had 1 week to decide which destruction to choose. I didn't sleep for 4 days. I went through the motions, surgery, rounds, coming home to Sarah and Grace, but I wasn't really there. My mind was trapped in an endless loop, analyzing options, calculating outcomes, searching for an escape that didn't exist. On the 5th night, Sarah found me sitting in the dark living room at 3 a.m. Michael. She sat down beside me, her hand finding mine. What's wrong? And don't say nothing. You haven't been yourself in days. I looked at her, my wife, the mother of my child, the woman who trusted me with her heart, her future, her everything. And I broke. I need to tell you something, I said. Something I should have told you years ago. Something that's gonna change everything. Her face was calm, patient. The face of a nurse who'd seen 1,000 patients confess their worst fears. I'm listening. So I told her. Everything. The forged degree, the fake credentials, the years of deception. Dr. Holloway, Daniel Whitmore, all of it. I watched her face as I spoke, watched the confusion give way to disbelief, the disbelief to shock, the shock to something I couldn't read. When I finished, she didn't say anything for a long time. 6 years, she finally whispered. 6 years, and you never told me? I was afraid you'd leave, afraid you'd look at me the way you're looking at me now. How am I looking at you? Like you don't know who I am. She laughed. It was a terrible sound, hollow, broken. I don't. I thought I did. I thought I married a doctor, a good man, someone who... Her voice cracked. Our daughter, Michael. You held her in your hands, and you were lying. Every day, every moment, you were lying. Everything I feel for you is real. Everything I feel for Grace. How am I supposed to believe that? How am I supposed to believe anything you say ever again? She was crying now. So was I. I don't know, I admitted. I just know that I couldn't keep lying. Not anymore. Not with this man threatening to expose me, threatening to take me away from you and Grace. You deserve to know the truth before everything fell apart. And what is the truth? That my husband is a fraud? That the father of my daughter could go to prison? The truth is that I love you. That everything I've done, the lying, the pretending, all of it, started because I wanted to matter. I wanted to save lives like the doctors who failed my mother. And then it became about you, about us, about building something worth protecting. She wiped her eyes, looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. What are you going to do? About this man? About his demands? I don't know. I can't do what he's asking. I can't lie under oath, can't corrupt evidence, can't help his son escape responsibility for nearly killing someone. But if I refuse, he'll destroy us. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then, we need to find another way. I stared at her. We? You're still my husband. Her voice was hard, but there was something else underneath. Something that might have been love, or might have been grief. I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't know if I can ever trust you again. But I'm not gonna let some corporate attorney blackmail our family. We'll figure this out together. She stood up. And Michael, if we survive this, you're going to spend the rest of your life earning back what you've broken, starting now. She walked back to the bedroom. I sat in the dark, tears streaming down my face, wondering if I just destroyed my marriage or somehow, impossibly, saved it.
Sarah had an idea. "Whitmore came to you because he thinks he has leverage," she said the next morning, Grace playing in the next room, blissfully unaware that her parents' world was falling apart. But leverage works both ways. "What do you mean?" "He committed a crime by threatening you. Blackmail is illegal, and he did it in your office, which has security cameras." I froze. The hospital had installed new security systems 2 years ago, cameras in every office, every hallway, every corner of the building. I'd forgotten they were there. The footage would show him walking into your office, sitting down, and having a conversation. We just need to prove what that conversation was about. How? There's no audio, it's just video. Sarah smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "We don't need audio. We need him to do it again." The plan was simple. Dangerous, but simple. I would call Whitmore, tell him I'd made my decision, ask him to meet me somewhere private to discuss the details, and this time I'd be recording. "It's entrapment," I said. "His lawyers will argue it won't hold up." "It's not entrapment. You're not a police officer. You're a private citizen recording a conversation for your own protection. In this state, one-party consent is legal." "How do you know that?" "I looked it up. You're not the only one who knows how to research, Michael." 3 days later, I met Daniel Whitmore at a restaurant downtown. I'd chosen a private booth, told him I wanted to discuss the arrangement somewhere we wouldn't be overheard. He arrived looking confident, certain he'd won. "I assume you've made the right decision," he said, settling into his seat. "I've made a decision, but I have some questions first." "Ask." "If I do this, if I testify that the victim's injuries were less severe, what guarantee do I have that you won't expose me anyway?" He laughed. "You have my word." "Your word doesn't mean much to me. I need something concrete, something that proves you'll keep your end of the bargain." "Like what?" "I want you to say it, out loud. I want you to confirm exactly what you're asking me to do and what you're offering in return." Whitmore studied me for a moment, suspicious, but his arrogance won out. "Fine. I'm asking you to provide false testimony regarding the injuries sustained by the pedestrian my son hit. You will state under oath that the injuries were exacerbated by pre-existing conditions and that my son's actions were not the primary cause of her current medical state. In exchange, I will keep your fraudulent credentials secret and allow you to continue practicing medicine. And if I refuse, then I will contact the medical board, the hospital administration, and the police. I will provide them with evidence of your fraud. You will lose your license, your career, and your freedom. Your wife will be humiliated. Your daughter will grow up knowing her father is a criminal. I nodded slowly. I think I've heard enough. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone, showed him the recording app, the red light that had been blinking since I sat down. His face went white. You're familiar with this state's recording laws, I assume. One-party consent. Everything you just said is admissible in court. Here's what's going to happen. You are going to walk out of this restaurant. You're going to forget my name. You're going to leave me and my family alone.
And in exchange, I won't send this recording to the district attorney, the Bar Association, and every news outlet in the state. His hands were shaking. The confident predator from a week ago was gone, replaced by a frightened man who just realized he was the prey. You can't do this. I saved your life. Actually, I saved yours, and I'm giving you a chance to keep it. One chance. Take it. He stood up, nearly knocked over the table. This isn't over. Yes, it is. And Daniel, if you ever threaten my family again, I won't be so generous. He left. I sat there for a long time, my hands finally shaking, the adrenaline draining out of me like water from a broken glass. It was over. At least, that part was over. What came next was harder. The recording kept Daniel Whitmore away, but it couldn't fix everything. Sarah and I spent the next 6 months in therapy, together and separately. We talked about trust and betrayal and what it meant to rebuild a marriage that had been built on lies. Some days, I thought we'd make it. Other days, I saw her looking at me with something like hatred, and I wondered if I'd lost her forever. Grace kept us together in the beginning. The shared responsibility, the routines, the way she'd crawl into our bed on Sunday mornings and make us both smile despite everything. But eventually, we had to decide. Not for Grace, for us. I need to know something, Sarah said one night after Grace was asleep. We were sitting on opposite ends of the couch, not touching, not looking at each other, just existing in the same space. Anything. Why medicine? You could have faked any credential, become a lawyer, a businessman, anything. Why choose the one profession where a mistake could kill someone? It was a question I'd asked myself 1,000 times. Because of my mother. Because she died in a hospital surrounded by doctors who didn't care if she lived or died. Because I wanted to be different. I wanted to be the doctor she deserved. And have you been? I thought about the 847 lives I'd saved, the children who'd grown up because of surgeries I'd performed, the parents who'd come home to their families, the patients who'd trusted me with their lives and walked out whole. I've tried. Every single day I've tried. Sarah was quiet for a long time. I believe you, she finally said. I don't understand you. I don't know if I'll ever fully trust you again, but I believe that you wanted to do good, that somewhere, underneath all the lies, there was something real. She moved closer, not touching, but closer. I'm not ready to forgive you. I don't know if I'll ever be ready, but I'm willing to try. To see if we can build something new, something honest. What does that look like? I don't know. Maybe you come clean. Maybe you find a way to make this right. Not the fake credentials, but everything else. The lying, the hiding, the pretending. If I come clean, I'll go to prison. I'll lose my license, my career, everything. Maybe. Or maybe you find another way to help people. A way that doesn't require you to be someone you're not. I thought about Dr. Holloway, about her watching me all these years, about the deal we'd made, the understanding we'd reached. There might be a way, I said slowly. Dr. Holloway, the investigator who discovered me, she's been trying to reform the medical licensing system, close the gaps that allowed people like me to slip through.
She's been asking me to consult, to help identify vulnerabilities, train investigators, make the system better. She'd work with a fraud? She's pragmatic. She knows I understand the system from the inside, and she believes, or she used to believe, that I have something to offer. Would you have to stop practicing? Yes, but maybe that's not the worst thing. Maybe it's time to stop pretending and start being honest about who I am and what I can do. Sarah reached out and took my hand, the first time she touched me willingly in months. That's the man I want to be married to, not the fake doctor, not the liar, the man who's willing to give up everything he's built to become someone real. We sat there, hands intertwined, watching the darkness outside our window. It wouldn't be easy. Nothing worth doing ever is. But for the first time in 8 years, I could see a future that didn't require a mask, a life that wasn't built on lies, a chance to become the man my mother always believed I could be. 1 year later, I work for the state medical board now, not as a doctor, I'll never be that again, but as a consultant, an investigator, someone who helps ensure that the system works the way it's supposed to. Dr. Holloway became something like a mentor. She still watches me, old habits die hard, but now it's with something might be respect, or at least understanding. Sarah and I are still together, still struggling some days, but together. Grace is 5 now, and she thinks her daddy helps catch bad guys. She's not wrong, exactly. I think about the 847 lives I saved, the patients who trusted me, the families who thanked me. I don't regret helping them, I can't, but I regret the lie, the arrogance of thinking I could play God with the system and never face consequences. My mother wanted me to do something that matters. I think I finally understand what she meant. It's not about credentials or titles or what people call you. It's about showing up every day, doing the best you can with what you have, and being honest about who you are, even when, especially when, the truth is hard. So that's my story, the lie I lived, the damage I caused, and how I tried to make it right. But I want to hear from you. Do you think I was a hero or a villain? Do you think the lives I saved justified the deception? I've asked myself that question every day for 8 years, and I still don't know the answer. Type hero or villain in the comments and tell me why. And if you've ever had to choose between doing what's right and doing what's necessary, between the truth and the outcome, I'd love to hear your story. Because I've learned that life is rarely as simple as right and wrong. Sometimes the best we can do is try to cause less harm than good. My mother used to say that everyone wears masks. The question isn't whether we're pretending. It's whether the face underneath is worth revealing. I'm still not sure about mine, but at least now I'm willing to let people see it. Michael.